We spoke a moment ago about capitalism. Part of the reason why capitalism is a fundamentally immoral system is that it can only exist by appealing to it can only exist by inciting a never-ending desire for consumption. When people exist in a state of contentment, they don't buy new things. The ordering of this value system causes you to believe that by acquiring more created things, that you will become happier and a better person. That your ultimate transcendent value is to be measured in the number and nature of the possessions that you gather. That's fundamentally incompatible with Islam's view that your fundamental value as a human being has to do with two things and two things alone: faith and character. The attractions of the dunya at a material level in a capitalist society are overwhelming. The cure for an attack from the dunya that's recommended in Masalik al-Janan is khalwa. If the world is your problem, then you withdraw from the world into spiritual retreat. 1 day, 3 days, 8 days, 40 days of Moses. Unplug from all human connections. What was the solution to the messenger, by the messenger of God sallallahu alaihi wasallam, when he looked at the rampant materialism and amorality of Meccan society? Unplug. Go to a cave. Look inward. Find the riches that are there. It's very difficult to do when we have families. It's very difficult to do when we have jobs, but it is a necessity to periodically take 1 day or 3 days where you just simply withdraw, where you don't check your email, where you don't check the Instagram stories, where you're not on Facebook, where you are just unplugged totally. That spiritual retreat is that place that allows for the contemplative reflection. That was the space that Ibrahim was in when he watched the star and the sun and the moon rise, and he knew at the end of that with certainty, he had yaqeen who his Lord was. It's not just the materialism. Many of us, if we're spending our time in a room like this, when there's a lot of worldly things that we could be doing on a Saturday, that's not going to be our principal concern. Some of us in this room have actually already given up attachment to material things and created things. We don't care about them. Sheikh Hassan Sise used to make a supplication. He said, "Oh Allah, fill our hearts with you and our hands with the dunya." It's not that you shouldn't have any material possessions. It's just that if material possessions mean anything to you, then you shouldn't be trusted with them. Material possessions for someone who doesn't think that they bring any meaning or value except the good that can be done with them are a good thing. What Ahmad Obama says in Masalik al-Janan, he said the best state of affairs regarding the dunya is kafaf, sufficiency, self-sufficiency, that you have what you need. And then he says, but know that it is better to have gratitude in abundance than it is to have patience in poverty. Yes, seek out this world not for its own sake, but for the good that you can do with it. Seek out income so that you can give charity. Seek success so that you can spread a word of truth and a word of light. Gather means so that you can take care of your family and provide for their religious education. But don't think for a minute that those goods do anything. Don't think that they have any intrinsic value of their own. The only value that they have is in the use to which you put them. And if that is just for the glorification of the self, the glorification of the ego, then it's going to be hot on that day. It's going to be hot on that day. And that's not just for the dunya, that's for all of our activities. Even ones like this, like teaching ostensibly religious ideas. There's a story that was told me, and I'll tell this and then I'll finish the dunya part. Sorry if we just go just a couple minutes over. It's a parable about a religious scholar who goes on that day to the Malik. He goes to the foot of the throne on that day of judgment with his right hand extended and his left hand behind his back, ready to get his book in his right hand so he can go on to his happy destination. And as he approaches, the throne, God says, "Put that hand down and show me the other one." And the man says, "Why? My whole life, I learned your book and I taught your book. I taught people the religious sciences. I guided them to you." And God will say, "That's true. You did those things. You did those things so that you could have a beautiful house. You did those things so that people would say that you're pious. You did those things so that people would say that you're intelligent. You did those things so that you could have a fine mount. You did those things so that you could have a beautiful spouse. And I gave you those things already. Now get down in that fire." The reason why we focus so much on ihsan and intentionality in cultivating these traits is that without the intentionality that an act be performed just for the sake of God, then it will be repaid with other than God. What's done for other than God is repaid with other than God. In the example, it's not just the material things that are the seduction from the dunya, but it's also prestige. Riya, huburiyasa, the desire to be seen. That is the principal danger from the dunya, much more than the materialism. Especially for people that are in a room like this on today. For those of us that take our religion seriously, sometimes it becomes an identity that becomes a performance that is as much for the pleasure of ourselves in being seen by others as it is a performance for God and His messenger. We think of ourselves as a certain kind of person and we get external affirmation from other people about that. And at a certain point, that risks becoming an end unto itself. And that when those deeds are done for the pleasure of others, then they violate the basic conditions of ikhlas. They're no longer accepted. And not only are they no longer accepted, now they become punishable offenses. You would have been better off not being pious at all, instead of being pious for the sake of others. Uthman Danfodio said, pleasing people is a goal that you will never attain. How much more foolish then that you should seek it in exchange for God's wrath. What did Bob Marley say? You can tap the water till the well run dry. No matter how you treat him, a man will never be satisfied. Could you be loved? People will never be satisfied with your actions. everyone will always find fault with you for one reason or another. Your performance, they'll say, oh, he's holier than thou. Oh, she was crying during the recitation of the Quran just so people could see it. That dark mark on the forehead is for other people to see. You'll never make people happy. Stop seeking their pleasure, because you won't have it one way or the other. That's the principal danger from the dunya for most of the people that are in a room like this one on a day like today. And it's very insidious. It's very difficult. It's the reason that some of the most righteous people in the history of Islam took the path of the malamatiyya. They took the path of blame. They would conceal their acts of worship, keep them private, even sometimes publicly associating with people who were involved in sinful and shameful things, just so that people would think low of them, just to keep themselves from having to struggle against that desire to perform actions of worship for other than God. Should we take a minute for questions and then have some lunch? Yeah. Mm. Yeah. Oh, she asked about the difference between pleasing people and having good adab with them. I should have been more clear. Having good adab with people is always required. What I'm talking about is having people be pleased with your worship. Exactly, showing off, ostentation. I'll just give you a personal example.